My very lovely students, welcome to another unit of our English course here with me at Academy Teach. Today we have unit number 4. This is the last unit that I have planned for this model. I'm thinking of making an extension unit, but that's not like 100% confirmed. So we're just gonna start with what we have, and we're gonna take this one as the final unit of our of our course, right? Wow, level 5, unit 4. This is, a real, B1, B2. So, congratulations. Your English now, it's supposed to be intermediate, which is kind of like an achievement. It is great. So, let's see what's the context of the story here. It says, Alchemy Bar is already working incredibly well. Kristen stops by from time to time, helps out, chats with the team, and some days he even steps behind the bar, just like in the old days, to keep his skills sharp. He likes bartending, he likes mixology. So now that he's the boss, it is like, he still wants to do the job and mix a few drinks, right? On those nights, while he's making drinks, he listens to the stories his customers share. Well, maybe not in Chile, but maybe in other countries, it's kind of like a common thing that you go to a bar alone, you just get yourself a drink in the bar, right? And then maybe you start speaking with the bartender and everything, right? Each story belongs to a different genre, and I like to read this because here we have some, pronunciation that might be useful for us. This word that I have just pronounced, right? This one over here. The pronunciation is genre. It's not genre, is genre, which is basically genre means género literario, okay? So each story belongs to a different genre and becomes a narrative excuse to introduce new language content. So basically, all these stories that we are going to learn, of course, will help us to learn English, will help us to dive into different narrative, genres, and of course, it is a great excuse for us to learn new language and new content. So, well, I'm just gonna go here with the cover of this unit. It is, stories from a bar, right? So here we got all the objectives and the information that we need to know in order to see what we will, cover in this unit. But first, that I like to go for this, okay? I would like you to think, okay? Think of these 3 questions. These questions are not so much to make conversation between us, but this is more for you to reflect on, okay? So let's reflect on this photo. What are the ideas, the concepts, the contents that evoke us, that elicit the photo in us, right? Of course, here you've got the first integrated activity, which is basically describing an interesting conversation you had with a stranger. For example, I remember that I was on a plane. I think I was going from Germany to Norway, and on the plane I met a Brazilian girl. We had a really nice conversation in Portuguese. I was learning Portuguese. I was trying to find, excuses to practice Portuguese. And, low battery. Okay, I'll fix that later. And, basically, I remember that the conversation was about, the things that you do in Norway as like an American person, etc., etc., etc. She was migrating. So, I think it was nice. So I invite you to go through this, okay, to cover all the instructions, right? The basics, do the vocabulary box to see the words from the previous unit. And we're going to go here to the warm-up activity. These ones are the ones that we like to talk about, right? So, there was a previous activity. Sorry for that. And, we're just going to let it load. And let's get started with the questions. Okay, so first of all, why do you think people find it easier to tell their secrets to a bartender or a stranger rather than their close friends? Is it easier to be honest with someone you'll never see again? Yeah, I think it's because of that. Like, if you'll never see them again, or maybe there's no the pressure that you will feel judged sometimes by your friends, maybe just like, telling your things to someone you don't know is not very common, but probably it might be easier if that person will never see you again. And actually, you're paying for the drink. So basically, you're paying for the psychological therapy too, right? So, yes. Imagine that you're sitting at the alchemy bar and someone tells you a chaotic story about losing a job. Would you offer them advice immediately or just listen? I think that first I would just like listen and offer some, contention. And then maybe I would just like recommend or advise, I don't know, a few things in case I am asked for advice. Sometimes people, they just want to be listened to and they just don't want advice. That's also something important, right? People often exaggerate stories when are socializing. Yes, of course. To exaggerate in honor to the plot, cuando dicen exagerar en honor a la trama, right? So, how can you tell if a story is true if someone's just inventing details to make it more interesting? I don't know. I just go with what I hear. Sometimes, like, people, they try to make themselves look like they're the heroes of their stories, or like they are the ones doing like, maybe they did like something, but they exaggerated like 3 or 4 times. So I don't know. It's hard to tell. But the people that, or at least you can identify the people who do that, and that is also good information, because if you know that the person who's talking to you tends to exaggerate in honor to the plot, you know that sometimes you have to believe half of what they say, right? Have you ever overheard fascinating or dramatic conversation in a cafe or a bar? What were they talking about? No, like, I have overheard conversations. Overheard means como saber, como escuchar, como otras conversaciones, okay? Of course I have, but like, interesting stories? Never. Maybe, I don't know, like a couple's fight or something. And finally, think about the best storyteller you know. What makes the stories interesting? Is it the suspense, the funny details, or the way they express emotions? I think I'm a great storyteller. But I think that I took that from my mom, like not my biological mom, my other mom. And she is such a great interpreter when she, before Netflix, when if you missed one episode of your favorite show, you missed it. So she would tell us if she saw it, right? And she would act, and she would remember, the dialogues, and tell the dialogues as if you were watching the series or the episode. So I think I took that from her, and now I think I'm a great storyteller. I mean, I sort of like to stand up comedy. I do that with my friends. Like, I tell my stories sort of like in a more comical way or something. So, but I think that's also something very normal, within the community. Like, the gay community tends to have this, sort of like stand-up comedy, or at least, different way of telling stories. But yeah, well, so we're just gonna go back to the main page in here, and we're gonna go to this. Okay, this is the context, and this is what I want you to do, and this is just for you to work on. These are just listen stories, which basically means that you just have to listen. There is no preparation, there's no transcript, there's no comprehension. This is just a listen exercise. But there is a very, varied or a broad range of stories. Okay, so here we have, a few familiar faces, right? There's a story of mine. There's a story, crossover part 1. This is Akia from level 4. And this is Andrea from level 2, right? The idea is that you can sort of like listen to the stories, but also like maybe just have like a notebook at hand and just, go through them, listen to them, and then maybe just have sort of like a little summary, or at least had a little, note for you to remember the different stories, because the different stories we are going to use them, you know, during the development of the unit. So yeah, we're gonna go for the context. And here it says, Alchemy Bar is no longer just a dream, is a lively, successful place filled with music, color, and the clinking of glasses. You see, I'm very, dramatic to read, so I think I'm a great storyteller. Christian only visits a few days a week now, but whenever he steps behind the bar, the whole atmosphere changes. He greets the team, checks the menu, and puts on his apron. Apron means delantal, okay? Ready to mix drinks just like the old days. Well, we spoke about this a little bit, in a couple of pages ago. So go for the stories. Christian is bartending. He will listen to stories of people who's gonna go to the bar, right? You've got the context and the explanation, right, around everything that's going on in this page. And of course, I'll invite you to go through this activity over here: reveal, recognize, and apply. This is vocabulary that we will use along the unit. And finally, I invite you to work on the integrated activity that will be related to this page. So that's it for this step. Thank you very much for taking your class. Thank you very much for getting up to here. And well, I'll see you on the next step. Take care. Bye-bye.